What you did was to look for ways of including everybody in the conversations about treatment plans and functions and information, making those conversations more inclusive in terms of who was having them, and more comprehensive in terms of all the information that was getting shared. So it seems like there was, and again, I'm reading into this.
Yeah, you're reflecting quite a bit that I said. So
okay.
You're still being true to what I said.
I'm not going out of the boundaries.
You're not interpreting too much.
Okay.
No.
So it was more of finding out what would be a supportive work method rather than top-down directives to everybody to do what you think they needed to do based upon your diagnosis of what the situation was at that time. Is that a fair?
Yes.
So, and the effect of that was to sort of get everybody to be more included,
That's
more
right.
involved, and ultimately more functional. And the proof is the incidents vanished, went down to the point of vanishing. I mean, there was probably other, improved treatment, improved patient outcomes, I would guess.
It all improved, not just the incidence of violence, right?
So what was interesting to me when we were talking a little bit about this off air is the impact that had on the staff, not just on what was going on with the patients, but what went on with the staff. So you were telling me about one woman. In fact, she was the one that suggested, that poked you in the back, as you put it, Kathy, to take the team leader position. And you were just talking a little bit about her, who she was in that position. You want to talk a little bit about that?
The coming in as a professional, there was a distinction between us and them. The professional staff, we had titles, and then there were the aides. And the aides, to get the position, you needed a high school diploma. That was it. Mm-hmm. I went and got my college degree, and my peers all had college degrees in advance. They were doctors and so forth. My gosh, and why didn't these people go on? I don't, it's their choice. But they seemed to be just as intelligent as everybody else. And when you listen to them, they had incredible observations about the patient. So they knew people very well. So, and I understood many of them were disgruntled, or they lacked, positive morale in the place. And I valued their voice. I wanted them to be a part of it, and I wanted the psychiatrist to hear these folks and attend to, because he's prescribing. And if they're doing this, help this aide find out what to look for and notice. Because you can actually pick up before the violence incident. When Jimmy is going to go off if you're watching, and let's teach each other that kind of a thing. So there was a lot of value in the aides, as well as everybody else on staff. But it seems like they were on the sideline, and they weren't a part of it. They weren't attending to. I didn't think they were very highly functional. Yet once we included them. Hey, they all came to the meetings eventually. They talked to me. They engaged in the treatment plan development. They became part of the therapeutic team in a way that they hadn't been before. So there was a sense of, hey, acknowledge them, give them recognition for who they are. Their voice is just as important. And the effect is that we had 100% participation from our staff.
And this particular woman who pushed you to take on the position, you gave me a kind of an insight into how this affected her.
It's my supposition that it seemed to me that she was as bright as anybody else that I'd ever met, and yet she had a frontline entry-level position that had no career path at all. There was no place for her to go. She couldn't become a nurse. She wasn't going to become a doctor unless she went back to school. So why wasn't she going back to school or do whatever else she wanted to do in her life? And so it seemed to me that the job was too hard to stay very long, or you have to kind of cut your losses and don't invest so much in your job because you're going to get worn out. Emotionally, it takes a toll. The kind of people that you're working with,
Right.
And to sustain that kind of investment in being with these people, to me, I don't think was sustainable. I lasted 4 years, and I consider it a great environment to be in. But if I would have been there for 14 years, or 10 years, or 20 years, I'm not sure if I'd had such a positive attitude. So I kind of felt for these folks. It seemed like they didn't have any options. She saw something in me. It's like, okay, you see something in me. You poked me. You said, go be the team leader, Tom. I said, well, why me? I didn't ask her that. I just looked at her, and she just looked at me, and I said, okay. And I did it. And she supported me for the rest of the time I was there. She eventually went back to school and got her cosmetology degree and opened up her own beauty salon. I think that's what it's called. So she did leave that environment. And, I applaud her. I don't know if she made more money because it's a good paying job.
But she went on to sort of, it sounds like she sort of gained some momentum to open her own business. That's a pretty big step.
Yes, it's a huge step,
So what's interesting to me about this, you used the word demoralized. When you came in, the staff was demoralized. And somehow, in some way, the process that you initiated as team leader, which I'm going to call this a kind of bottom-up support as opposed to top-down direction process, helped to, I don't know what's the word for it, remoralize it, to raise the morale,
inspire,
to lift up the staff, give them a greater sense of participation and ultimately, maybe, at least for some of them, somebody like Kathy, a sense of her own capacity to do something more than this, and in fact go on to do that. So what's interesting about that, as I listen to it, is, again, or maybe not again, maybe it's coming clearer, and maybe this is something else to add to the couple of the themes that we were talking about that were emerging before. That there was a sense that you had that these people have the aids, the tribute, than anyone's giving them credit for, or anyone's giving them an opportunity to exercise.
Yes, both.
And there has to be a way, and in a certain sense, you're seeing them sort of deprived of the opportunity to use that capacity. That's like an element of the demoralization. The inability to mobilize your capacity because nobody's helping you, or that's just not something anyone's noticing, results in this demoralization. And that was something that you sounds like you noticed and had a sense of, that's not okay. I want to do something about that. The sense of about the connecting people with their own capacity for a more effectiveness, more contribution, more whatever it is that they can do. That seems like something that surfaced for you in that environment that I haven't heard so much about in terms of the ARC.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like that's a point where that sort of surfaced, your sensitivity to this sense of when people's capacities to contribute are not recognized or supported, there's something wrong with that. Not only that it creates dysfunction, it's demoralizing, and that's something I think ought to be dealt with. Is that a fair?
Yeah, sure. It's hard to note. It's hard to see.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to live with,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you can do something about it.
Right. So that's an interest, and it surfaces there. But it sounds like that sort of became then at that point, or let me down. Sounds like so. Where did you go with that from the prison situation, prison job?
I started to get this business of a career and advancement, as you mentioned before, for myself.